All right, welcome back to another live stream here on Free Will Photos. Today we're going to do something a little bit different where I just talk you through my editing style while using ON1 Photo Raw 2023. Now, if you still want to pick up Photo Raw 2023, you can use coupon code FreeWillPhotos20 to save 20% at checkout. And it is a commission coupon, so I get a small commission every time anyone uses that, and I greatly appreciate it. Now, if you happen to be on Vero and you just want to connect with me, share your content, your photos, check out what I'm posting over there on Vero, then you can check me out at Free Will Photos. And that link is also down in the description box below. But if you're on the app, you can absolutely check me out that way as well. So let's go ahead and jump into the computer and take a look at our photo today. We have a image here of a leaf, and all of the photos for fall today are going to be images of leaves. I really like leaves, so these are all photos that I have personally taken, so that's just the way it is. But if you have a photo that you would like to see me edit, then please send it my way and I will do that. So the very first thing here is I think it needs to be I think I need to run TaxSharp AI on this. And that's just because these foreground leaves, or the front edges of these leaves here, they're not in focus and I would like them to be. So what I'm going to do is actually duplicate this layer. So that way I have one with TaxSharp AI and one without it. And then I'm just going to blend it in. So I'll call this one TaxSharp. And I haven't tested this out, so I don't know if this is going to work. All right. This is just trial and error. I'm being real with you, and we'll see how it works. So I'm going to go ahead and drop TaxSharp AI on there, and we'll let it process, think through, do its thing. So it did its thing. Not entirely. Let me just zoom out. One of the things that I like to do is zoom out and see what it looks like when I would just normally view it. And I think it was just too out of focus. It wasn't just barely out of focus. It was like really out of focus. So I don't think I'm going to get that detail back, but that's okay. So good news is I don't need to use TaxSharp AI, so I'm just going to hit apply, and then I'm going to delete this layer, and we'll only work off of a base layer. So right click and delete layer. I'm not worried about sharpening this photo anymore. Okay, so the very first thing that I have been doing lately is going to linear raw and then hitting AI auto. And I don't like what it's done so far in this image. I play around with it for a little while just to see if I can make it do what I want it to do. But if not, then I just reset. And then I go with a different option. So we'll see what profile we have here. And I have a pretty good color, or I have a pretty good tonal range looking at the histogram up in the upper right, so I'm not overly concerned about the tonal range. I'm just more looking for the style that I want to go with. And you can go with portrait. That's going to give like a brighter atmosphere, but this photo was taken more in the shade, and I think landscape fits this particular image a little bit better. So I'll hit AI auto just to see what it does, and that does not like, I don't like that at all. And, you know, just to be fair to AI Auto, if it's too strong, you can grab this auto slider and you can pull it down. But I just don't like the balance that it gave, because I think the photo is actually well exposed. I just want to enhance it. All right. So what I'm going to do is pull down on the blacks because I want to put more contrast and more attention on the leaves, and this background area doesn't really need it. Now, typically what people like to do is pull up on the shadows, and pulling up on the shadows is actually a good technique, except for in the end state, the vision of this photo that I have in my mind is a little bit darker, and we're going to use some local adjustments to really bring out the leaf there. So I'd rather start with a darker palette, and then when I get into the local adjustments, I can increase the luminance values of the leaf itself using some targeted adjustments or color range masks, things of that sort. I will pull up on the midtones though, and as you can see, that's going to brighten the leaf up here just a little bit. And let me play with the contrast slider. I like what it's doing, so I'll pull the contrast slider a little bit there. You got to be careful with the contrast slider because it is pulling your blacks to the left and your whites to the right. And if you want to do that, I think the better option is to use the bleach bypass filter. But sometimes it's just a lot easier to grab this one slider and go with it. Now, when we talk about fall photos, it's all about the colors, in my opinion. So I need to bring up the vibrance of this photo, and this is a good time to go preview on and off. And I'm getting a brighter yellow in this leaf up here at the top, which I'm going to have to correct that with a color enhancer. And then I want to look at the greens in this area. So if I turn this off, they're kind of muted, flat, which is fine. And now they're a little bit more punchy and vibrant, but I think I'll adjust the greens as well. So I'm looking at two different color enhancers. And then I need to deal with this bright area here. So that'll be in the local adjustments. So those are the three things that I'm seeing that I need to do right now. You can also play around with the haze slider. If you pull the haze slider down, it's going to darken things. And if you pull it up, it's going to brighten things. It works really well on some photos and others not so well. And then let me see if this highlight, if I pull down on the highlights, does it do anything? Nah, it doesn't do anything for this area. In fact, if I hit the J key, I have some blown out whites in that area. So we'll have to deal with that as well. All right, let's go ahead and let's start. Let's go ahead and start modifying the tonal value of this area. I think it's wise to get your tones correct before you start to work on anything else. So with this one, since it's only in this area, I'm just going to use a brush at 100% opacity once I can get up there. Okay. And keyboard shortcut for modifying opacity is holding down shift and then I'm sorry, that's for the feather. I think it's actually option. You hold down option and then you use your bracket keys. Shift and bracket keys modifies your feather, if you can see that at the top of the screen there. And then option and bracket keys, left or right, modifies the opacity. But you can always just click up at the top. Now I'm just going to go ahead and paint over this, and I know that I'm using the negative exposure adjustment or the darken adjustment, and honestly that might be just fine. That fixes the problem. I don't think it messes up the image overall, but I will pull down on the highlights just a little bit, and I think I'm even going to pull down on the whites, and I think that it just takes it from that bright highlighted spot to something not as bright. And there's going to be a vignette on this, so that's going to be just fine. Now, one of the things that I love about using ON1 is the fact that you can rename your adjustments so that way you know what you did. So I'm just going to call this bright control. I could probably name that better, but I think it's enough information for me that if I need to come back to this edit later and see what I did, it'll pop up and I'll be able to edit that. All right, so now let's get to the colors. The first one that I'm going to put on here is a color enhancer. And I'm probably just going to use a range of color enhancers because I want to have control over saturation and vibrance for the entire selection range, so to speak, without having to go into individual color ranges. If that doesn't make sense, it will here in a second. So I'm going to click on the mask up here, and then I'm going to click on color range, grab my picker tool, and we're going to work with just the yellows right now. So I'm going to go ahead and click there, hit the letter O. Let's take a look at our mask. And as you can see, when I hit the letter O, it's selecting a lot of other stuff. I don't want this one, this little bit over here. So what I'm going to do is grab my brush, make it a little bit larger, and I'm going to paint that out because I don't want that. All right. It's important that you clean up your mask at least a little bit. And this works in any version of ON1 Photo Raw, by the way, that has the color range mask, which I believe goes all the way back to 2021. So if you are wondering like, hey, will this technique work for me if I'm on an older version? It absolutely should work for you, because as long as you have the color range mask, which I believe is in 2021, I could be wrong. It could have been in 2022, but I'm pretty sure it was in 2021. So hitting the letter O, got rid of all of those other areas. And now what I like to do to make sure that I'm targeting the areas that I really, really want, instead of using the mask overlay like so, what I like to do is make it look really weird. So I'm just going to pull up on the magenta slider here, and I'm going to oversaturate. This way it pops out as I start to pull in on my color range. So I know that I'm targeting the area, because I'm missing some yellow in here that I really want to get to, because I want to adjust the vibrancy of that area. So I'm going to pull up until I start to see that yellow turn to a magenta. And it's okay if the color range is kind of selecting more, because the only area that I'm going to adjust, I'll pull that back a little bit because I don't want it to select too much. I do want it to be kind of tasteful. So I think that'll work. And then we'll just go ahead and set those sliders there. So now what we'll do is come down here to our color range, and I'm going to click on the yellow slider. And fun fact, yeah, it's still showing in there. All right. If there's a particular color that you want to adjust and you're not sure where it's at in the color range, but you know where it's at on the photo, you can use this eye picker tool right here. And right now I'm on hue, and I do want to adjust the hue, but I really want to start with the brightness. So I'm going to click the eye picker tool, and I'm going to click right in here. And to me, it was too bright. So I'm going to pull this to the left. And if you look at the bottom of the screen where it says brightness, you'll see that I am just darkening those yellow colors. All right. If I pull it to the right, they're going to get brighter, or at least they're supposed to go. There we go. And the preview just isn't catching up. So I'm going to let that go, because I feel like that should have been darker. But for whatever reason, let's come up here to the top. Let's turn this effect off and on. So it is getting darker. It's not as dark as I would like it to be. And that's where those luminance range masks that we're going to apply, I guess now, because I'm not getting the desired effect that I want. So I'm going to come over here to the local tab, and we're going to add another adjustment. And I guess this is a good opportunity where I can see what, so the flora is not going to work for me in this particular image, which is fine. I'm not overly concerned about that. But what I will do is I will hit lumen, and we'll hit the letter O, And what I want to do is get this to be this leaf, this entire leaf. I want this to be like a bright white. Okay. So what I'm going to do in my masking selection, by the way, not the actual tonal change. So what I'm going to do is pull up on the window here, and that's too much because I'm starting to lose some of that leaf. And I'm not worried about the rest of the background here because I'm going to mask this in over that leaf here. So we're going to pull the fade here, the center of the levels. We're going to pull this to the left, and you see that's adding more information. So essentially the transition from the darkest point to the middle gray all the way up to the brightest point in this luminance range is being targeted. So it's adding more into my luminance mask. So as I pull this back, you can see I'm really starting to make that bright white, and it's really honed in on that leaf. Now, for me, that's pretty good. If you've watched any of my content, you know that I always feather my luminance mask just a little bit, and that helps things blend in a little bit better because I like more natural adjustments. So we'll hit the letter O, and I will reset that for the exposure. And what I want to do here is bring down, actually, I do want to bring down the exposure, just not as much as it was. And I think that'll be fine. And then what I'm going to do is paint away everything else that's not the leaf. All right. So Shift X, so that way I can paint away, and it's just going to make this a little bit easier. All right. This is normally where I would speed up the video, but since this is a live stream, I'm not going to speed it up. But what I will do for your sake is not make the most perfect selection. I would also be taking time to really get in there and clean up some of those areas. But I just want to show you what you can do so you can see the potential of editing your own fall photos since we're in that season. All right, so we'll hit the letter O and leave that be. Turning this off and on, let's see what happens here. So it does kind of dim the lights on that leaf, and I know that it looks like it's very gloomy, and I'm going to fix that a little bit later, but it doesn't work with Windows 7. Oh, yeah. ON1 Photo Raw 2023. It does not work with Windows 7. It is a pity. I'm sorry. But there are former versions of ON1 that should still work with Windows 7. So now we'll come back over here to our color enhancer, and we will pull up on the brightness for the yellows because now that I have the darker color, now I can really just saturate this. And this is where, you know, some people get a little carried away with adjusting the hue. And as you can see, it's turning it to a darker brown. And that's essentially what I was going for, right? And then I can even come over here and trying to make that turn just a little bit darker brown. And then if I go back to the green channel, I can move the greens a little bit more towards yellow. And this is starting to make that fall leaf look. All right. Now, again, you could overdo this, and I am not recommending anyone overdoes this. I'm not recommending that. But if you want to go for something that's a little bit more creative, why not? Enjoy it. All right. Now I am going to make this a more vibrant selection. and maybe even saturate it just a little bit more, because I do want that more punchy fall, and I'm going to warm up these tones. So let's go ahead and turn this off, turn it back on. You see the leaf is just a little bit more orange. It's a little bit more punchy, and I think that that works pretty well for this particular edit on the leaf, just for the yellow color. So very important that we name that, and then we'll grab another color enhancer. And this time I'm not going to worry about masking. I'm going to hit foliage. And as you can see, it brings out that green in here. Now that's a little too strong, so I'm just going to pull down on the overall opacity. And if I turn this off and on, you can see that it brings a little bit more punch to the leaf, and I think that that works out pretty well. So now what I need to do is work on brightening this leaf all over again, but I want to preserve the shadows that are happening down here in the leaf itself. So if I come over here to local, we'll add a local adjustment. And what I'm going to do is hit the letter M. We're going to grab us a vignette tool, and I think it is center. Nope, we want edges. There we go. And I'm going to do the reverse of this particular thing. I'm going to increase the exposure, bring down the highlights, modify the shadows a little bit. I'll open them just a touch and pull down on the blacks. And I'll even contrast this area, so that way it's really popping. Okay. And I'll even add in some structure, because why not? Structure works a little bit better than the tack sharp. Now this looks, it looks good, all right? I think so. I think this works for this image, but I am losing some of that that orangish, wow, I can't talk today, orange looking color in the background there. So what I want to do is come to my gear icon, and I want to remove this from the highlights, because I don't need to brighten those highlights. They're already pretty bright. So by pulling this out of the highlights, it's going to help me preserve that area. Now, let me go to the extreme. I'm at 34 now, and it's very subtle. I don't even know if it's coming through on YouTube. But for me and this particular edit, I think that's where it needs to be. And then we can even try the skin tones, because that is more of a brown, but when I do that, it takes it out of too much of the photo, and I don't want it to be removed completely from the photo. Hit the letter J, and I'm okay with all of those being blacked out. In fact, what I'll do is I'll pull this in just a touch more, and then we will rotate it like that. And I think that's a better feel for the light forming around the leaf. Okay, so now we'll go back to effects, and the back and forth game is just a part of life when it comes to editing photos inside of ON1. We're going to grab the sunshine filter, and that is way too strong, so I'm just going to pull this down. And why do you not want to cooperate? It's still way too strong. And we'll add a very subtle glow. All right. So this is what I would consider. So this is what I would consider look number one. We went from here, which is a pretty flat image, to here, which is a more vibrant overall image. And if I wanted to, I can even vignette this. So if I can add a vignette, and vignettes are very subjective. You choose if you like them or not. Big Softy is a very popular one, and that looks good. You know, I'm not going to argue that that doesn't look good on the image. Just turning it off and turning it back on, you see it just kind of darkens down those corners. Now, what I am a huge fan of, and I'll even leave the vignette on for this, what I am a huge fan of, you see me do it often, is throwing a border on the image. Now, I keep it simple, and I just go with a simple white square right here, or I'll go with the white key line, which on this image, the key line doesn't even show up, so not a big deal. But I do like to shrink my borders, and this is just a personal thing. That's the beauty of ON1. You can do a lot of stuff with simple clicks, and you know, I have now an image that I would be happy to share on Vero, which it will be on Vero a little bit later today. So if you're on there, you can check that out. Let me go to snapshots, and we'll call this Look 1. And just go ahead and hit save. Now, the reason why I want to call that Look 1 is because the other thing that I would do with this image is I would add a curves adjustment layer, and I'll put this under the vignette because I want this on top of everything. All right. And then just go ahead and bring up the blacks to fade that. Now, this is also a really good look. I would leave this like so. So I'll even go snapshot, and we'll go Look 2. Okay. And then what you can also do, and this is what I typically do, is I pull down after I fade the image. I pull down, and to me, this just gives like that memory look, like kind of a, I don't know, like a polished touch, a matte look. That's what it's called, a matte look. I personally like this, and you know, if I turn that off and turn it back on, it's still contrasty, which is what I really enjoy. But what I found in my new style, or at least in my editing style that I'm liking more recently, is I like this flatter look with a touch of contrast in the shadows, right? That's just a personal opinion there, or a personal style. Now, what we can also do in the blue channel is we can try to add a little bit of yellow in the blue channel, so it brings a little bit of that that golden touch. So if I turn this off and turn it back on, you see that things just get a little bit more brown down here. All right, and we can even add some red if we wanted to, and this is a whole nother look. And the curves is one of those things, if you play with it enough, you will find a new style just from messing around with the colors. And to me, I like this style. The problem that I have with using the curves inside of ON1 is there's no way to remove a node. So if I wanted to remove that node, I can't right click on it. I can't double click on it to remove it. I can't hit delete to remove it. It just, the only way to remove that node is by hitting Command Z. But that's only undoing the last action that happened, not actually just removing the node. So if I move this node around like 7 times, I have to hit Command Z 8 times just to delete it. To me, that doesn't work well, not for my workflow. Which is why I don't use the curves all too often inside of ON1. I usually use the curves in other programs where I can delete it when I get ready to, or when I want to. But that's, again, neither here nor there. Hopefully one day we'll get deletable nodes inside of the curves module or curves filter. But yeah, and this will be look number 3. Just so that way I don't lose that look. So just so we can go through these looks one more time. Look 1. It's thinking about it. All right, so look number 1. This is how we, where we started, or not where we started, but the first look that we finished on. Then we have look number 2. And this one, by the way, is more contrasty and darker toned. Look number 2 is less contrasty, and we've brightened up some of the background areas here. But the leaf is still the primary subject, and I think that's just by nature of how much space it takes up in the frame, as well as the focal point, right? Pretty straightforward on that. And then we are coming into look number 3, which, honestly, after cycling through all 3 of the looks, this is my favorite out of all 3 of them. I don't know. You let me know which one is your favorite down in the comment section. But to me, this is like that fall aesthetic that I was looking for in my mind, in my vision. Is it a little less of reality? Maybe, right? I don't think we altered it too far. I think we've edited and enhanced the image, because while I'm turning this off and on, you can see all of the colors that we pulled out in this particular edit, they were already there. So this is just the way that I think I like this look personally. And that's what I'm going to go with. So I want to say thank you to everyone that hung out. If you found value, smash the like button. If you think someone will also find value from this video, consider sharing it. And if you're new here, subscribe. My name's Chris. I create content centered around ON1 Photo Raw, just helping photographers learn how to use the software so you can get your art out into the world a lot faster. If you got questions about the program, if you got questions about editing, anything of the sort, let me know in the comment section below. I do answer all of the comments. Now, if you want to pick up ON1 Photo Raw 2023 or any other product over on on1.com, you can use Freewill Photos 20 to save 20% on anything that's not subscription based. And if you want to get something that is subscription based, I believe the code saves you about 5%. Don't quote me on that. Just try it out, see what it does save you, if anything. Now, if you happen to be over on Vero and you want to connect with me in that way, then hit me up at Freewill Photos. I have a link to my profile down in the description box. But you can also just use the Vero app or wherever and hit the at Freewill Photos. I really enjoy this app, and I'm working on a review video to just kind of share how I use the app to share my work with the world. And if that's something you're interested in, just say, hey, tell me more about Vero down in the comment section below. That just helps me know that I need to work a little bit faster on that particular video. And until next time, I want you guys to stay inspired and keep creating. Peace.